שסחבתי ציוד כבד לסילבר פלאנה, 1,800 מטר, לראות שם טוב את הכוכבים. בלילה, הייתי קם בלילה לראות כוכבים.
ראית?
Hmm?
Did you see them?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. שם הייתי רואה לפעמים את המילקי ווי. מה שלא רואים בעיר פה.
לא. כמה שנים הלכתם לשם?
27. 1950? 1980 עד 2007 בערך. כן,
בטח כולם הכירו אותך שם.
כן. אכלתי לאה. Very good indeed. היום אני יכול לאכול לאה עוד. למה? I'm not going to cheat.
כמה?
The blood tests. I'm going to cheat them. I'm behind them. I've done them. If I eat now...
כמה? 2 חתיכות עוד?
כן.
באמת,
עד עכשיו, אתמול לא הייתי אוכל ככה בשביל היום לקבל bad test results. היום אני אדם חופשי. I'm cheating myself. I'm not cheating, אני מרמה את עצמי. כן. בסוף לא נתת לנו.
בסדר,
כאילו...
כאילו...
יבוא הנה, אני מוכנה להביא לו.
יש לי כל מיני שאלות, אבל כאילו...
Alright.
זה דברים בסיסיים.
Alright. נקווה. תתחילי עם סבתא.
למה? תתחיל איתך.
לא, סבתא. She's much more interesting. She has a much better memory. Her childhood in Germany, fantastic. She's unique. There aren't many people in Israel who have such a memory of Jewish life in Germany before the war.
בסדר, ואני גם מעניין אותי במשך המלחמה ואחרי זה.
אני מבין. נכון. אני הלכתי ל-Owen School, public school, founded in 1613 by Dame Alice Owen and funded by the brewery company and על 6 שנים evacuation during the war, we were whisked away on the 1st of September 1939. When the Germans invaded Poland, we were whisked to Bedford.
The same day?
Yeah, the same day. We were in all of August. We came to England on the 2nd of August. In the nick of time, the last Kinder transport from Prague, from Czechoslovakia, the last of the 669, on several transports, without the period. During August, we went to school, to a London school, which was on a holiday. We could use the premises because there was no teaching, nothing. Kids were at home. We used to have to be there all day at this school, using the playground, using the premises. We could do what we wanted there.
Did you have
prepared to be sent away from London? They thought they would be bombing us, Germans maybe bombing us immediately. When the Germans invaded Poland on the 3rd 1st of September, bombed Warsaw and staged a so-called Polish attack, which never took place. Yeah, the Germans.
Yeah, in the radio station.
We were whisked on that same day. We were taken to the railway station, 50 miles, which is 80 kilometers. Not like others who were sent away to to Scotland and to Wales. We were sent to Bedford, which was on the railway line LMS, London Midland Scott. About 50 miles, a 1 hour train ride, taken off the train, and what they called billeted with families. English boys, kinder transport boys, and there we were, 6 years in Bedford.
Who explained all of this?
Hmm?
In the beginning,
And there's a book.
well, I mean, yes, but to you, because you were all, nobody spoke English yet.
That's right. No.
So who told you? Okay, we're going to Bedford now.
Good question. We have probably learned a few words. We were billeted with Christian, Shutim, simple people, low, not high class, And we didn't know English, and how could we communicate? Family. He drove a horse and cart. He was delivering coal, as they did then. Horse and cart, coal and coke. You know what coke is? Which is coke is light coal. I don't know how to explain. He was delivering. He came home every evening black.
Right.
Had to shower, had to wash. That's right. And slowly, gradually, we learned English. Quite a story. Quite a story. But I have a partial blackout concerning as regards my stay in Bedford. I don't remember everything. Not everything. Now, there's a book, Owen School, in the 80s, 90s, no, about 15, 20 years ago, they wrote a marvelous book of the 6 day called Well-Remembered Fields, about the 6 years evacuation of Owen School in Bedford from 1939 till 1945. First of all, a marvelous introduction about history of the period, and then contributions by various old boys of the Bedford period. I feature there too, a few lines about being kinder transport and getting into Owen School. At the beginning, they didn't. Owen School, the English schools didn't like the refugees because they were taking up places reserved for the English boys, so that every refugee boy, kinder transport, who got into Owen School, he took one English boy less could get into Owen School. So for 2 or 3 years, you're recording me. No,
Mm-hmm.
no, good. For 2 or 3 years, we couldn't get in, but the Jewish authorities there protested against this, and so in 1941 or 42, they succeeded in getting me because I'd won a scholarship. I should have got into Owen School.
In 1941.
I already knew English and I already was a good pupil, and I don't know. we learned English quickly. And
What
only-
subjects were you good at?
I was in the matriculation exam, in the matric, what they call matric. That's end of secondary school. I took the matric in 9 subjects. In Latin, French, and higher mathematics, advanced mathematics, of course, yeah. Not simple, but not arithmetic. But
But you were
I
11.
got a distinction. I got a very good. I got a distinction.
At 11 years old, you got a high mathematics.
No, that was in 1945 when I
Ah,
was 15. I was
okay.
born in 1930,
Yeah.
and the exams were held in May 1945. Exactly when I was exactly 15 years old.
Right when the war ended.
Huh? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, about May. Yeah, and I came top. I was top of my class, and I got the best results of the school in this matric that year. And my headmaster wrote a marvelous testimonial for me, 4 lines. He's one of the best pupils we've had here in recent years. When I got to Palestine in 1945, after 4 years in 1949, they established the Faculty of Law in the Hebrew University. The Hebrew University was founded in 1925. Lord Balfour was here, and Weizmann and all the big boys. And in 1949 they established the Faculty of Law. So I got into the first, first class, yeah. When I showed this to the registrar, who has to decide whether I have to take entrance examinations, when he saw this recommendation and my school certificate with good results, and this recommendation by my English headmaster, I was exempted from I didn't have to do anything. I got into the university without any entrance examinations, nothing at all. They didn't want anything from me. My Hebrew was atrocious because I had worked. When we came over in November '45. That was the British mandate, and I was introduced to the Postmaster General, and I started working at the age of 15.
In the building on Jaffa Street.
That's right, the Generali near the Generali building. Yeah, the head post office, the big monumental. It's a big, strong building. So I was introduced there by some very prominent Jerusalem Jewish businessman who knew the PMG, the Postmaster General. That's the South, the Minister of Posts, cabinet minister or something. Yeah, started working there. And what language did you speak in the personnel section? I didn't work selling stamps. I worked inside the building in the personnel department, staff department. So what language would Arabs, Christian Arabs, Muslim Arabs, Syrian Arabs,
Mm-hmm.
very extremist Arabs, Armenian people who were working in the same section, what language did they speak together? English. So there we spoke English for 1945, 1946, 1947, 1948. I didn't need much Hebrew then at the time. Didn't need much. I could get along without the perfect Hebrew. I wasn't writing. I wasn't studying. I wasn't, I wasn't listening to lectures and all that. I wasn't using Hebrew. So in 1949, that was the state of Israel since May 1948. But then, my Hebrew was okay by then, but not perfect, not very good, not like a local-born person. And got into the university. There we are, and studied there for 4 years and finished with distinction. Summa cum laude, what do you call it over there? You did too.
Maybe.
Oh, you did, yes.
Wasn't there a Cyprus time?
Cyprus, yeah, I was sent to Cyprus in at the end of April 1948, when the English were about to leave the country, they were fed up here. They'd been bombed, they'd been executed, there was trouble. We chased them out. They sent about 10 English, about 50, 60 Arabs, and about 15, 20 Jews to Cyprus, to the Palestine Government Liquidation Office, to prepare final accounts with the suppliers, to prepare the pensions of the government officials, to prepare the pensions, to calculate the pensions and prepare the pensions due to the Palestine government mandate officials. So I was.
Was everyone sad? Were the English people sad, or were they happy to leave?
About what?
About leaving, the end of the mandate.
About whom leaving?
Them.
The English.
Yeah. Was it a dreary mood?
I don't know. They thought we were a colony, They were used. English people who worked in the dominions and in the colonies, British, they were dominions and colonies. Canada was not a colony. Canada was a dominion. Australia too. So for them, it was foreign service, Britons working in foreign countries. They were used to moving from Egypt to or from one English colony to another. They didn't expect to stay in the same country for the whole life. So when they left, they probably liked it here because there were all kinds of. It was a cultured country. You had Jews here from Germany. You had coffee houses and you had theaters and you had you had good music here. You had a philharmonic orchestra. It was then called it wasn't called the Philharmonic. It was called נכון, לאה. זה היה Palestine Symphony Orchestra. It wasn't yet called that bombastic name Philharmonic. Up to this day, Boston has a symphony orchestra. There's no Boston Philharmonic. There's a Boston Symphony. Well, anyway, we had a good orchestra. We had wonderful chamber music concerts. We had good musicians. We had musicians coming over from abroad, of course, during the war not. And it was it's a historic country. Especially people who were Christians, devoted Christians. They were sorry to leave and to be sent to some African countries, with natives there and all that, blacks and all that. Yeah, some of them were sorry about it, I'm sure. Yeah, and some have been very loyal and good persons here, who had helped, who had been, been very proficient in their fields, and they helped Israel in Palestine. They helped Palestine to establish, all kinds of infrastructure and things. And there were some of them probably sorry about leaving, I'm sure, yes. And some were glad to get back home. Not everybody was sent to another country. It all depends what your age was. If you're 55, you'll probably stay in England. So there's a book about this, and I feature there. And I can't find the book. I don't know where it is. It's a wonderful book, and I feature there. And some of what I said is there in italics, because anyway, I don't know. I've got to get it again. Well-remembered fields. If I don't, maybe it's behind these books here somewhere, buried behind them, or I asked Dad whether I didn't give it to him, he should be checking whether it's not. Maybe it's in Canada. I don't know.
I think we have one.
Well-remembered fields. Please check that next time you're in Toronto. Please see whether you've got it, because this is I've only got one copy, and they begged me. They wanted to. The editor of the book, they phoned several times from England. They begged me, they beseeched me, to be interviewed like this and tell them about my experiences at Owen School in Bedford during the war for the book. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm too busy with my mother. I'm going up to Jerusalem several times a week, and I haven't got the time, and I can't devote the time to that. And I told them, sorry, I can't. So, but anyway, they had something in writing from me, and they used that. They put it in the book, and I mentioned there several times. Yeah, and my brother Erwin too, who also went to Owen School. He joined Owen School in 1943. He was there for 2 years. He was also a distinguished pupil, excellent. He was an excellent pupil, top of his class and wonderful. And he came to Palestine at the end of the war. He was born on 31st of December 1931. At the end of the war, he was 13 and a half, in mid-45. He came to Palestine when I came to Palestine at the age of 15 and a half and started working at the age of 15 and a half. He was then under 14. I had got my matric, so that when I wanted to enter university, I had to present my papers and they could accept me if they wanted to. He didn't, he had not even done his matriculation. Erwin started working in Jerusalem for the first of all he tried to go to school, to Beit HaKerem Secondary School, which is a very good Jerusalem, very veteran school, one of the best schools in Jerusalem. But he didn't know Hebrew. He went to that school, but he didn't know Hebrew. He came from England, and altogether he didn't feel didn't feel at home at the school. So he was there only about a couple of months. He left. He was then at home. We lived in Shmuel HaLaviv, which was in a very dangerous area. And then he started at the age of 14. He started working in a coffee house in Cafe Allenby. I think so. Leah.
מה?
ארווין עבד בקפה אלנבי, לא?
כן.
איפה שהיה, נו, איך נקרא?
הגלידה, כן, אני יודעת.
He got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Huh?
דנקנר.
I'm not Dankner. Anyway, he started working there. He would he'd get up at midnight, very early, in the night, early morning, like Leah, about 4 o'clock, Safta, before 4 o'clock. Used to walk through the Bukharian quarter to mid-Jerusalem, near Jaffa Road, which is where you have the railway there, and they used to produce their own ice cream, litter-wise, gallons of ice cream produced there, homemade. And then after a certain time, that was terrible. He was working very hard, and imagine a boy of 14 years doing this. And then I got him. I'd been working at the post office, and I got him also. I succeeded in getting him to work also at the post office, which was better. Government service, not very high salary, but anyway, it's a better job.
But did you all come together immediately after the war?
Huh?
Did you all come here together?
No, we didn't come beat after the war. We came. It's like this. We were thrown out of England. Why? Because most of the kinder transport boys and girls, their parents were exterminated in Europe. Saba and Safta, Alfred and Honey, they had the foresight in 1938, December 38. They saw what's happening in Vienna. The Anschluss was in March 38. They saw what's happening. My mother was a marvel in foresight.
Well, do you know if they had to vote in the referendum?
Hmm?
Did they vote in that referendum that the Nazis had? You know, the one where they had a referendum in Austria. And the question was, should Austria join Germany?
When was that?
Right when they took over.
Hmm? I don't think the Jews were allowed
No,
to
no.
vote there. I'm not sure they weren't. Anyway, what talking about? What were we talking about? Just a second.
How they had foresight to leave.
Yeah, they got Palestine immigration certificates. They succeeded in getting from the Palestine government Palestine immigration certificates, something
Wow.
terrific. In December, I've got them here somewhere, Palestine, saying that Alfred Tomashov is permitted to enter Palestine provided that he arrives in Palestine by the 31st of December 1939, which was already wartime. They had sent us to England on the 31st of July 1939 from Prague. We arrived in England on the 2nd of August, just 1 month before the war broke out. Suddenly while already in England, evacuated to Bedford. In the beginning of December 1939, we suddenly get a postcard from our parents. We are in Palestine. Because how come? Because they had received from the Gestapo. At that time, Eichmann was not. They weren't yet executing. They wanted to get rid of the Jews. The trouble was there were no countries who were willing to, hardly any countries, China except, China did. Hardly any countries permitted Jews to enter. Hello? Advertising, something they want to sell something to us anyway. So what do I talk about?
Hardly any countries were permitted.
Yeah. So in November 1939, 2 months after the war broke out, Eichmann was still trying to get rid of the Jews, and there were hardly any countries willing to allow Jews to enter. America wasn't. America. Roosevelt, he was pressured not to agree to allow Jews to, at the time, he was pressured. He was quite a good person on the whole, Roosevelt, He wasn't a bad person, but anyway, he was persuaded not to agree to Jews. England allowed 10,000 Jews to enter. Us, the Kindertransport, they did permit 10,000 Jews to enter. America didn't allow Jews to enter. There were ships which had arrived in Cuba and all kinds in America, which were sent away. There was a ship which returned to Germany.
St. Louis.
Yeah, there you are. Good for you. So, anyway, they had received at that time the German. I've got the Gestapo certificate here. November 1939, Alfred and Honey too are hereby permitted to leave wartime occupied Czechoslovakia on condition they are permitted to re-enter. Imagine who wants to re-enter Czechoslovakia within 1 month. After that you're not allowed to return. So they got these exit permits, and with those they went by train to Trieste in Italy, which Italy hadn't joined the war in 1939. They joined it in 41 I think, yeah? And from Trieste they had this ship, they came by boat to Palestine. And there we got the postcard, and from then on we corresponded. And my Saba and Safta, Alfred and Honey, had the foresight again. All the letters which they had received from us, they preserved, they kept them, they didn't throw them away. So after the war, everything we wrote to them from England, including letters which included our daily schedule, they used to pester us with questions. Tell us what you're doing, how you're living, with what you're eating, when you get up, what do you do, when you go home, when you sleep, what do you eat. So there were letters in which I gave them my full daily schedule. I get up at this time at 7:30. I eat one slice of bread, and I go to school. And I come home midday, and I go back to school, and this and that, and the other. Full details of our daily schedule. So I've got all these letters. Yeah, so that's a part of the story.
So, and then how did they tell you that the war was over?
How what?
How did you hear that the war
Oh,
was
how
over?
do you hear? Who didn't hear? Of course we heard, yeah. Yeah, celebrations, yeah. And then, after the war, all those German, Austrian and Czech boys and girls whose parents had been exterminated were allowed to stay in England. You know, they had nowhere to go. They were orphans. We had parents in Palestine. So, and the Jewish authorities, which had been helping us and supporting us and financially, they had enough on their problems with these orphans. You can leave. Go to Palestine. Go to your parents. My headmaster my English headmaster of the public school, 1613. Tried to intervene with the Jewish authorities, the Jewish Board of Deputies and the English authorities, Jewish authorities, to allow me to stay to study for another couple of years to get a higher school certificate, with university entry and all that. They refused. The Jewish authorities refused. No, they should leave. So in the end, in November, 6 months after the war, we went to Liverpool. From Liverpool, we came to Palestine, to Port Said in Egypt. On the way, we slept on a troop ship. It was a big ship. It was a liner, passenger liner. But during the war, the passenger liner had hammocks. Down deep inside the lower decks had hammocks. We slept in hammocks, which is marvelous. You know, you didn't get seasick. Yeah, the ship was rocking, and we were in the hammock, yeah. So we got to Port Said. At the border between Egypt and Palestine, the Palestine authorities were not used to people coming with immigration certificates to Palestine. So the train was delayed for 20 minutes while they examined them, our papers. And then we were allowed to continue through Sinai to Palestine, to Lida Junction. Then Lud was the main railway junction in Israel. Lod. The train traveled at the speed of, let's say, 15 miles an hour, I think, through the desert. It arrived in Palestine the next day. In the afternoon we came to Lida, and from there we took another train from Lida to Jerusalem, and we arrived in Jerusalem on the 19th of November 1945. The three of us, yes.
What, were their parents waiting there?
Yeah.
Did you recognize them?
It was very strange. We changed, everything had changed,
What language did you even speak together?
Look, we knew Czech. We had forgotten in England. Why? Because the English authorities had heard us speaking Czech on the streets, and they did not want foreigners speaking foreign languages in the streets. They were very insular. They wanted everybody to speak language which they understood. Altogether, don't forget, they were suspicious of everybody. Jews who were not like me, 15 years old, but over 18 or 19, At that time, they didn't. Those silly English people didn't understand the difference between a Jewish German-born person and a Christian. They sent. There were Jews who were adults, young adults in England, were interned in the Isle of Man and Isle of. They were kept. They were. It's not imprisoned exactly, but you were interned. Your lived. It was deprived of you. Until they realized after a year or two that they're silly. These are Jews. These are and some were even sent to Australia. Young Jewish persons were sent to Canada and Australia, deported from England, because they were born in Germany. They didn't realize, those silly people didn't realize that a German Jew was not a danger to England. They were absolutely crazy until they came to their senses later.
But what language did you know then?
Then we came to it's like this. Czech we had completely forgotten, completely, and letters which we, the three of us, had written as from December 39, when my parents were in Palestine, we wrote them letters at the beginning in Czech, which was this. We went to Czech schools. We knew Czech. We were writing Czech letters. When I got these letters, these preserved letters from my parents, after we write, I didn't know what I'd written. My writing was there. I didn't know. So what did we do? Your dad there's a lady in Toronto, a doctor, a Czech lady. She agreed, she was kind enough, without payment I think, to get these letters or photocopies of them. We sent them to Canada, and this lady translated my letters and Erwin's letters and Felix's letters into English, sent them back, and then for the first time I could understand what I had written to my parents from England in Czech, in the Czech language, in 1939, 1940, till I stopped, and I told my parents, please stop writing to me in Czech, because I've forgotten Czech. Because once they told us, please do not speak Czech, we didn't speak Czech anymore, we were picking up English, we forgot Czech totally. I know 10 words of Czech, 10 words, 15 words maybe, not more, nothing more.
So what did you speak together?
What do we speak? But we knew German.
How?
German, we still knew some German, not perfect, far from perfect, but we had already at home, my mother was from Vienna. My grandparents had fled Austria in 1938 from Hitler, who had, he had entered Austria in March 38, and they had come to us, to Brno, and we had, of course, they knew Germany, they knew German. Hello? Ken? Ma? לא. בבקשה. Yes, so we knew, so they were in Brno, and they of course knew only German. So we spoke to them German, and they knew my mother knew English quite well. My father less well, far less well. When they corresponded with us, my mother later, Safta, she wrote in English, and the English is very good. So there's no problem there. They wrote in English. They didn't write us in German, but of course, after the war, we spoke German here with all kinds of people, and we brushed up our German. Now it's my German is pretty good. My pronunciation isn't always very good. My what you call it? My choice of words, not my vocabulary is very rich, but anyway, we spoke German. We didn't speak Czech with my parents after we came. We didn't speak. Sorry, we didn't speak English. No, we didn't need that. We spoke German. Till the end of my days of my mother, we spoke German. Always German. Always German. Yeah.
But what did you say? Like after you didn't see them for 6 years, right?
6 years we corresponded.
But you didn't see them. They didn't. Did they send
No,
pictures?
no. Oh yes, they sent pictures. Yes.
Did they get pictures of you?
Yes, of course. They got a picture of Then you used to go to a photographer. When you had a bar mitzvah, you didn't have somebody who came and photographed. You went to a photographer. He took 1 or 2 pictures of you, dressed very elegantly. And when we got married, we got 1 picture. We went to a photographer. It's not like today. It's different. Safta and I, went to a photographer. There are no pictures of us of our wedding. Nothing.
Where was it?
But anyway, we did get pictures. We probably sent a few pictures too. But you know that during the war, letters were later. Letters. There was no room in the airplanes, for letters. There was not enough room. What they do in England, you wrote air letters. They were photographed in England to the size of a stamp, like a stamp. And they were sent in the form of a stamp to Palestine. Here they were enlarged again to this size, not the same size as this sheet here, but smaller. And it wasn't sharp. It wasn't 1 in 2,000. It wasn't very sharp, but you could read them. Yeah, that's how you sent letters from Palestine to England, or from England to Palestine at the time. Yeah, that's a part of the story.
So you saw them for the first time in 6 years.
Hmm?
Did you have to get to know each other again?
Us and our parents.
Yeah.
Yeah. My father was then, after the war, at the beginning, he worked in the Ministry of Trade and Industry of the, was it the Palestine government? Yes. In Jerusalem, and then he worked in a shop in Geula, Mea Sharim, together with a partner. And then he worked in Jerusalem as a agent, as a Jerusalem agent of Tel Aviv firm selling cloth. For suits, for clothes, for high-class cloths. Yes. So we got to we stayed with them, and then married in 53. Let's say 5 years after 53. 53. So 8 years after. For the first 8 years, we lived with them. Yeah. Felix died already in July 48, which is only 2.5 years after, just over 2.5 years after we had arrived here. Erwin had to study my correspondence course. He studied for his matric, London matric, and he took his exams for the London matric, somewhere around. He was in the army in 1951, 52, and then 1951, and then in 1952 probably at the British embassy, he took his London matriculation examinations, passed them, and then in end of 53 was it? He wasn't here. ארווין לא היה בחתונה שלנו, נכון? לאה.
נדמה לי שלא.
לא. He was read in America in September.
אני חושבת
In
שלא.
September 1953, when Leah and I, Safta and I were married in Tel Aviv, Erwin was
Where?
in America, in Washington, working there as a night clerk at the Israeli embassy, opening the door for Abba Even, who was who was then, what was he then? He was, Abba Even היה אז השגריר או מה היה? כן.
לא יודעת, כן?
כן, אבא אבן היה שגריר, וויצמן היה הטאשה, הוא היה, חיים ויצמן היה, לא חיים ויצמן, לא חיים, מה שמו?
עזר?
לא,
לא.
לא חיים,
לא, אתה מתכוון איך שמו היה?
הוא היה הנספח הצבאי שם, הרצוג. Herzog, sorry, he was later president of the state of Israel later. Herzog was later president. He was opening the door for the military attaché Herzog and for Ambassador Ober-Even and for...
אבא אבן היה שמו, מה?
Yeah, and Simcha Dunitz.
עשה אותו דבר.
Simcha, מה שמו? Simcha Dunitz?
כן.
And who was later ambassador of Israeli ambassador, where was he? In America? What was he doing?
הוא עשה אותו דבר כמו ארווין.
Yeah, he was also a night watchman at the Israeli embassy in Washington at the time, Simcha Dunitz, yeah. And Erwin stayed in Washington from 1953 to 1956. He graduated from George Washington University. What did he get there? He got his first degree, and in 1956 he moved to Chicago and studied law there till about 1960, 61. He was very successful. He became the editor-in-chief, the first foreign editor-in-chief of the Chicago Law Review, which is very prestigious. Editor-in-chief.
Like Obama.
Yeah, he was there. Yeah, was that also in Chicago?
Obama
was it
might have
Harvard?
been Harvard, but
Harvard,
he
yeah.
went to Chicago.
Yeah. That's right. He was in Alabama. That's right. You're kol hakavod, you're there. Yes, in Chicago, he was the first foreign editor-in-chief of the Law Review. That's a very prestigious post, which opened doors for him. And when he finished his studies in 61, 62, he was accepted at a leading Chicago law firm, which then had about, 200 lawyers, which was considered huge. In the meantime, you've got firms who have 1,000 lawyers or 800 lawyers, and this firm also grew to, immensely. And he was there till he died in 1985. Yeah. That's Erwin. Yeah, I've got all kinds of... Felix, I went through all the documents which parents had given us after we came here, to see what Felix had written. Only one single sentence I had sent to you on Felix's 90th birthday. I sent you a quotation one year. I had spoken to Erwin's headmaster, and he said he was very happy with him. I don't know whether you read it.
Yeah.
That's a part of the story. That's just a part of the story.
When did you two meet? When did you meet?
Leah and I, we were, in Jerusalem. It was after the war, there were a lot of concerts in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a very cultural place, even today. And we used to go to concerts. And we went to jazz concerts. And there was Jerusalem is the YMCA opposite the King David Hotel. And we went to, there were concerts there, including jazz concerts. Now there was an Italian jazz pianist, Luciano San Giorgi. One name, San Giorgi, S-A-N-G Giorgi, first name Luciano. You've got him on.
הייתה לי חברה טובה.
You get him on the YouTube up to this very day, despite that it's 70 years. Now in 1951, I and Erwin and I went to this jazz concert on the Saturday night at the YMCA concert hall, auditorium, and Leah with Masha, who lives in Shorish, in Shoiva, who has a daughter who lives in Chicago. I don't know if you heard Masha. No, you don't know. Anyway, a very good friend, whom this Masha I also knew because because they were in a field of music and the kids. So at this concert, I saw Masha, whom I knew well, together with a very beautiful young girl who I was struck by her beauty, and I decided to have the courage to, at the concert, to say hello to Masha and get introduced to Leah. And that same evening, Leah, Erwin and I, instead of going from YMCA up to Talbiya and to we were living in Kiryat Shmuel, which is just beyond the president's residence. It's in the other direction. We first of all went from the YMCA up Nesicha Mary. They lived in the center of Jerusalem, near Kikar Zion, which is right. You know where Kikar Zion is. This is where you were there, and very close to Zion. So we went there, escorted them home, and from then on I was studying like mad at the time. I was working full time as a clerk at the post office.
The Israeli post office.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. And later I was working in the Ministry of Justice for my exams, 4-year studies for the Master of Jurisprudence, Master of Law. And we got, from then on, at the beginning I was so busy we didn't have much contact. They were living in, Leah, first of all, when we met, she was still living in Jerusalem. She was still working in Tel Aviv, living in Tel Aviv, but she soon moved to Jerusalem, and then afterwards we would meet, but not very often because I was so busy. And in the end, we got married in 1953. That's about 2 years after we had first met. At the beginning, we didn't have time to meet, you know. 2 years later, in September, we got married in Tel Aviv at the Ichud Shivat Zion Synagogue on Rehov Ben Yehuda in Tel Aviv. That's where we got married. Though, and I was still studying, and on our honeymoon, which we spent in Tivon, Kiryat Tivon, you know, it's Tivon is near, it's between Jerusalem and Nazareth. It's anyway.
Between Jerusalem and Nazareth.
Not Jerusalem. Between Haifa and yeah. I was still studying. Even during our honeymoon, I was studying for our last exams. Yeah. So we got married in September 53. That's it. Yeah. And then we rented a flat in Jerusalem. And we stayed in Jerusalem till 1956.
How much was the rent?
Hmm?
How much was the flat?
How much?
What, $30?
How much the rent for the flat in Jerusalem? No, it was so many pounds. I don't know, not much. Less than that. I don't know. I forgot now. I don't know. They were completely different rates then. Yeah, we lived in not far from my parents. Yeah. Till we moved. Yeah. That's a part of the story.
But you do remember the going around in Slovakia though.
Hmm?
You remember going to Slovakia. You
Ah,
remember the chickens.
yeah. I remember we were whisked away. It's like this. On the 15th of March 1939, when the Germans entered, they entered Bohemian and Moravia, Sudeten. They moved and they entered. They actually what they say they took over Bohemia and Moravia, and they came to Brno. The German army came to Brno. So on the 15th of March,
Did you see them?
1939.
Did you see them?
Yeah. So on the same day, my mother and father decided, and Slovakia was not. Slovakia was independent. Fascist Slovakia is different altogether. So they decided, my parents, that my father should whisk us away, the three of us, from Brno in Moravia, eastwards to Slovakia, to Nováky, to my grandparents, to my grandmother's home. My father drove the car. He didn't know how to drive. I nearly got a heart attack on the way because it was dangerous. You know, he was every mile of his. He could have had an accident, or a car could have overturned. And anyway, we got to Nováky. We'd been there before on holidays, not every year, and we stayed there at my grandmother's. They had a business in Nováky, a gas station and a general store, and as I said, there are chickens and geese and next door near the house. And my grandmother used to wring the necks of the chickens, of the hens, and kill them. And I saw that, and I got a trauma. And I also saw how they force-feeded the geese with hot food. Also terrible. No, terrible. And I got a trauma from that. We were there for about a week or two, and until things became clearer in Brno. Returned to Brno, lived in Brno till end of July. During those 4 months, the Germans were training below our house, down. It was then called Legionarska Trida, Legionarska Avenue. They were doing their exercises, what do they call it? Marching, we could see them from our flat from above. We saw the Germans marching and making noises and commands and everything. Yeah. So of course we saw the Germans. We saw them all the time from then on. Yeah. And I think we walked with my parents, and I think I must have said Nazis. Must have quite loud. Must have talked quite loud, and they thought the Germans may have heard my calling them Nazis, but nothing happened. We got away with it.
Weren't they Nazis?
Nazis.
You're not allowed to say.
National Socialisten, National Socialists, Nazis. Yeah. Yes, we saw. Well, we certainly saw them, of course. Yeah.
And especially on the train when you went on the,
Yeah.
they were there too, right?
Yeah. They were on the
They
train.
were running it.
They were. We were going through Germany. We went from Prague through Germany. It was an overnight train. It was a train, direct train from Prague to the Hook of Holland. It was, I don't know, they were specially allowed to go. You know, usually you'd had to go to Berlin or to Leipzig and switch and change and all that. No. That was a special train which was allowed to go through Germany. You know, it was so programmed that it could go through Germany.
אבל עוד לא הייתה מלחמה.
Yes, that was 1 month before the war. And so we got to Book of Holland next night. Took a boat to England to Harwich, 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 in East Anglia. Then took a morning train from Harwich to London Liverpool Street Station, where we should have been awaited by a representative of Rabbi Louis Rabinovich, the rabbi of the Cricklewood synagogue of Cricklewood, of the area. It's one of the parts of London, Cricklewood. But God, and we should have been. We should have arrived in the east end of London, in a yeshiva, in a religious place where they learned Talmud and Torah and all that all day. But thanks God they didn't arrive there at the station. They didn't pick us up. Nobody came. Till a London taxi driver saw us there stranded, while all the others had been picked up.
And no adults were on the train?
Huh? No, only kids. So others had been picked up. Everybody by each person who had guaranteed them, and we were left there. And this taxi driver took us around. And first of all, he took us. We had some tea, and I don't know whether we also slept at his home or something. Anyway, in the end, we ended up at a refugee hostel of the kindergarten hostel in NW2, northwest to London, in Cricklewood, where German kinder transport kids, boys and girls, young people, were staying in August 39. So we were the only Czechs there. We arrived there speaking Czech, strange language, some Slav, Eastern Asiaten. We were Asians, low, what do you call it, minderwertig. We were, second-class citizens, from Asian countries, yeah. And then we all together with them, we left London on the 1st of September, as I've said, for Bedford. Yeah.
You must have been so confused.
Hmm?
It must have been so confusing.
Yeah,
You're at the station, and then no one's there.
No one there.
And then,
but that's marvelous. Now, Hugo was crazy enough to complain about this Rabbi Rabinovich leaving us. He published this in all kinds of London papers.
when?
All over in the 50s, 60s, 70s, he had, complaining about Rabbi Rabinovich not having arrived there himself, or not having sent his representatives to pick us up and take us to a religious place in the east of London. God forbid we'd be running around with kippot and with payas and with tzitzis and other what. And that saved our lives. That we remained in other. That we went to Bedford. That I went to a good school, learned English. That was our. But until I brought Hugo to reason. I mean, I said, Hugo, what are you doing? You should be everlasting. There should be everlasting gratitude to Rabinovich that he didn't come and pick us up and take us to this religious.
אתם אי פעם ביררתם מה באמת קרה?
לא, מה בשביל מה? Me, Mao. And Jimmy Rabinovich, Rabbi Rabinovich's son. Where was he living? Where was he living in Beersheba? Rehov Ehud, where we were living, the son lived on the same road in Beersheba, where we lived for 26 years. And he was living on the same road, Rabinovich, their son. Yeah. And Hugo was crazy enough altogether. This Hugo, he had a very fruitful imagination. He for years he said that the train journey from Prague to the Hook of Holland had taken 4 days or 5 days, and all kinds of stories invented, untrue stories. He's a storyteller. In French they call it raconteur. Have you heard the word? Raconteur. He's a very good storyteller, mixing truth and non-truth and fiction and all that. Yeah, quite a story. No.
Did you go to Dolny Kubin?
Never been there. No.
But you went to Novaky.
Novaky,
yes, but Dolny Kubin.
We haven't been there. We haven't been to Novaky after the war. Haven't been there at all. No. We've only been to Bratislava. You know that during the war, Felix, he was a very good table tennis player, and he was also on the. We had a weekly magazine at the in Bedford. Where you have been to Bedford, have you? No. Bedford, where we stayed for 6 years, there was the Jewish youth center with the resident supervisors of the Jewish youth center. That was a nice big house where these couple, Mr. and Mrs. Harris, lived, and they ran this Jewish youth center. There you had Hebrew classes, and you had a place where you could play table tennis, and where the young Jewish people could meet. And on the weekends you had services there.
Did you have a bar mitzvah? You had a bar mitzvah?
Yes. I had a marvelous bar mitzvah there. They organized a huge bar mitzvah there.
Just for you?
Just for me. And Felix wrote after that I had a very nice bar mitzvah. And in the afternoon we had a Onek Shabbat. Have you heard the words Onek Shabbat? In the afternoon you had, a get-together where you sang and where you get together of Jewish people. And the whole day my bar mitzvah was celebrated. We had a midday meal, a festive meal there at the Jewish Youth Center for me, with my relatives who got to England before the war. They also came from London and
Who?
Bertzi, who is the brother of Marcus, the younger. Marcus the eldest, Marcus, my granddad, Novaky, and Bertzi, the youngest of them. Bertzi got to England with his wife Sidonia, and there are 3 children. Naomi Kalish, who will be 90 in August, and two elder brothers, 2 elder sons, Amnon and Avner. and they were living in St Albans, which is on the way between London and Bedford, 20 miles north of London, 2 kilometers north of London. So they came up to my bar mitzvah, and there are all kinds of uncles from London. Uncle from London that came up, and they spoke and speeches on my bar mitzvah. You know, a real celebration, a huge celebration. Yeah.
Was there food?
Hmm?
Was there food?
Food, the food was good. I don't know. They somehow happened to. It was okay. It was wartime food, you know. It didn't. You didn't for 4 years or 5 years. You got no whipped cream, no cream at all. Nothing. There's no such thing. It's forbidden. I think you got no, you know, you got no pineapple, and you didn't get all kinds of things you didn't get, you know. But in England, we couldn't complain. We had fruit there, apples, and you got a weekly ration. You got 1 egg a week.
One?
1 egg a week, yeah. Yeah, you were rationed. You got so and so 200. How many grams of meat you got a week? I don't know. It was, you know, it was really rationed. There was what they called rationing with the coupons. You had to, you know, you had they cut the coupons when you bought your weekly rations. Yeah, I mean, Palestine here, they had much more food than we did in England. England was cut off. The German submarines were wreaking havoc. They were sinking ships,
Right.
which were trying to bring supplies to England. Yeah, there was a big problem with the Germans.
You had a job there too, right?
Hmm?
You had jobs there too.
Who?
You.
Jobs.
For money.
What?
Like a paper boy?
Yeah. We a paper round, they called it. You called it a paper round. You're delivering early morning. You got up at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning. England is cold and rainy, and we had a bicycle, you know, years old, old bicycle, and you got wet through, and you delivered. I had a double paper round, and that earned me a lot of money.
A lot.
Relatively speaking, I made some good money until the resident supervisor discovered that we were doing a paper round and working even on Shabbat. On Shabbat.
Can't do
So
that.
he went to the. He didn't want to permit us to work on Shabbat. So, but anyway, after that, instead of getting 6pence a week, 6pence, half a shilling, 1/40th of a pound sterling, pocket money, we got it. And after having earned 10 shillings a week, which is a half a pound, which is like 20 times the pocket money we had received, we lost that. But when we stopped working, we started getting 4 shillings a week pocket money instead of half a shilling, 8 times as much, whilst not getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And on this paper round, I would pass a military camp of the Czech, what they call it, the Czech army, the Czech no, not in their own country. What do they call it? The Czech exnika Sava Polania Czechy.
In exile.
Exiled army. You know, the Czech government had escaped from Prague to Beneš. President Beneš, not Masaryk, Beneš, had left Prague in time and settled in England, and they established a Czech exile army. It was another name, not exact exile. There was a Czech army not in Czechoslovakia, but a Czech army, in like there was a Polish army too, in free countries. So in the morning, on my paper round in Bedford, I would pass a Czech camp there where they had Czech troops. And I would go there at 5 o'clock in the morning, say hello, I'm from Czechoslovakia. A 15-year-old boy coming, not 15-year-old boy, a 13-year-old, 12-year-old boy coming in. And so they would give me a huge mug of coffee or tea, huge mug, you know, they had mugs. You don't have small glasses. You've got big mugs in the army. So you used to get a big mug of coffee, or not coffee, tea. In England, you don't drink coffee, you drink tea. So they used to treat me very nicely because it was quite an interesting thing to get a boy who was doing a Czech boy doing a paper round. Yeah.
You could still speak to them.
And in our city, in Bedford, you had the British BBC Symphony Orchestra, the London BBC Symphony Orchestra, with famous conductors like Sir Markham Sargent, Thomas Beecham. They were staying, it was evacuated to Bedford. It was playing in Bedford. It was broadcasting from Bedford every week on the BBC. So we were, as young students, we were allowed to go to Bedford to the concerts without payment, you know, free. And we were present at the live concerts, which were broadcast, symphony orchestra broadcast, and we heard them. We heard the announcer there saying, "Now we're going to play this and that." You know, just it was live. We were there. And who was also staying in Bedford? What's Master there?
Ma.
Glenn Miller.
Ah,
Have you heard of
okay.
Glenn Miller? Glenn Miller. Glenn Miller and his orchestra, they were living or staying. There was a big American Army base, Air Force base, near Bedford, where they used to take off for Germany, to bomb Germany. Anyway, Glenn Miller and his band, very good jazz, very wonderful jazz. They were staying there, and they played, of course, also in Bedford. They would play for the Americans at their camps, you know, but they would also play in Bedford for the English public. So I went to the Corn Exchange where they played in Bedford. And how did I get in? Because I was willing to wash up there, I don't know, do some washing up. Anyway, I got in there and heard Glenn Miller live. Yeah, Bedford was close to London. You know,
עשו סרט על ג'יימס, על גלן מילר.
Glenn Miller, yeah.
עם ג'יימס סטיוארט.
James Stewart, yeah.
Hmm.
Glenn Miller was great. I've got records of Glenn Miller. It's marvelous. I think you can see him on YouTube. He's got his signature tune, my signature tune to Glenn Miller. Wonderful. They have a special style.
כן.
Have you heard him recently? No. Glenn Miller, wonderful, very good. He was a colonel. I think he had the rank of colonel in the American Army, if I'm not mistaken. Colonel Glenn Miller. Yeah. מישהו נהרג שם? אני כבר שכחתי. לאה.
אולי הוא נהרג שם במטוס גם כן?
כן, אני לא יודע, אני חושב שכן. אני חושב שהוא נהרג. כן. כן.
But you didn't live with the brothers, right?
Hmm?
You didn't live with the brothers.
No. We started on the same road. You know, we got to Bedford on the 1st of September. And then we were taken to various parts of the town. A group of us, about 50, 30, I don't know how many, were taken to one of the streets of Bedford, Bower Street, B-O-W-E-R. And we started at number 1 or number 2. And local citizens came out, were standing in front of their one-story, two-story houses. You know, no high rises there, just smaller. You know, and we were walking. We were taken along, and number two, the owner of the house, the couple would say, "This boy, I like him. I like the way he looks. I'll take him in. I'll have let him be billeted with us." You know, they used to get about 15 shillings a week for us. You know, from the British government. Yeah. So we were talking along the road. Erwin was picked up in. First of all, Felix was picked up at 126 Bower Street. With Mrs. Lee.
No, but Felix, I am Mrs. Lee.
Felix, Mrs. Lee, sorry. Irving was picked up at number 138, which was 5 or 6 houses after that, by Mrs. Churchman. And I was picked up or chosen at 144 by Mr. and Mrs. Barker. So at the beginning we lived very close to each other on the same road. But afterwards, all kinds of things happened, and we moved for various reasons. For instance, when I started staying with Mr. and Mrs. Barker, their daughter Jean Barker, she was in September '39. She was less than 5 months old, a baby, born on the 10th of April, 1939. I could take her, I could hold her. And afterwards, when they have more children, and the house was not very big, so that was one reason for having us move, because they no longer wanted, had room for, or there was another reason. I had a problem. I was wetting the bed. And you know what it means, wetting the bed then was, you didn't have washing machines, when you wetted the bed, somebody had to, manually, had to scrape the sheets and do the laundering. Imagine. So that was a big problem. That caused me a lot of problem with my landlords. Huge problems. So they didn't. Some of them didn't want me anymore. I was causing problems. Well, you wake up and your bed is full of urine. Imagine. So imagine that problem. So I was moving. I stayed at quite a few addresses in Bedford during the war.
How many?
Hmm?
How many?
Probably 6 or 7. Or I don't know. I've got when from my letters, I've got the various addresses. I noted them afterwards. I made a list of them. So with the dates of my letters, I know exactly when I moved where and to whom. Yeah, quite a problem. And Irwin also moved, not for that reason. I also moved, don't know why. He also moved. And Felix is the only one of the three of us who stayed with Mrs. Lee, a widow, for the duration. They call it for the duration. For the whole Second World War, he stayed with Mrs. Lee from 1939 till 1945. And he started working at the age of 14 because when he finished his elementary school studies, you couldn't get into higher. He was not permitted. The English didn't permit him to move to a higher school. They wanted their local boys to. So he started working at the age of 14 at a building material store, a big building material, very reputable store. And by the age of 18, after 4 years, he was managing one of the departments there. Imagine, at the age of 18. And when he fell in action in And when he left in 48, when we left in 45 for Palestine, they were very sorry that he left, and they got a marvelous letter from the company, from the building merchants, about how good he was and that he did a job of an adult, and how sorry they are that he's parting and leaving. And when he fell in action, they wrote a letter of condolence, very nice letter, very lovely letter. One of the two partners, Gale, the family, Gale, Gale, he became later the mayor of Bedford. He was the mayor of Bedford, yeah. Horace, whatever his name, yeah. So he was working there for 4 years. He worked there for 4 years. Studied for 2 years, worked there for 4 years. Came here, started working at a similar company here. He didn't like it. He worked there for a few months, but he didn't like it. It's a big firm here. I forgot the name of it. And then what did he do? He became a civilian employee of the British forces in Palestine as an assistant paymaster. He used to travel every day to the Gaza Strip. He was taken, to a military camp in the Gaza Strip, to a place called Bed Jirja, and where he was working as assistant paymaster. He was working there, I don't know, maybe a year, and there was not much of a future there. And in 46 or 47 he left, and he got a job at the Barclays Bank in Jerusalem. And that was where he was working till the war of independence, when he was called up for full service. From then till he was called up for full service in 1948 in May. Up to then he was on partial service. He was working at this Barclays Bank in Jerusalem. Barclays Bank, DCO, Dominion, Colonial and Overseas. Barclays Bank, not Barclays Bank England, Barclays Bank DCO, Dominion, Colonial and Overseas Company. Yeah. That was the story. So we've covered a certain period now. We've concentrated on that.
Vital story, יפה דיברת.
אה?
יפה דיברת.
אני דיברתי יפה?
מאוד יפה.
לא מאמין.
כן.
No, it was all ad-lib. אתה יודע מה זה ad-lib?
מה?
זה לא מאורגן, זה לא מנוסח.
לא, זה יפה מאוד.
There are things I haven't told you. How did I get to Cyprus to be chosen among all the Jewish employees of the post office? How was it that I was among the 10 Jewish or 12 Jewish employees, civil servants of the British government postal authorities, who was chosen to go to Cyprus with the Palestine Government Liquidation Office, who came over with big boxes of files so that to prepare the end account of suppliers and the pensions, all that. It was like this. After I had been introduced at the age of 15, a small boy, to the Postmaster General by this, I already mentioned, the merchant, by the Jewish rich merchant in Jerusalem, dealing in paper, stationery. Then paper was very important. There was nothing like this, only everything was in paper, by paper. So he was a big supplier of paper and other supplies to the Palestine postal authorities, a huge supplier. He knew this Jewish merchant with a big shop, with a big store. He knew the Postmaster General personally. We came here on the 19th of November, 1939, after a few days, he took me into the office, in the huge office in that building, which you mentioned before, of the Postal General himself. I stood there, and he gave an order: employ him in the personnel section. He commanded, and of course, instructions, and I was immediately started working up at there. Now, that was Mr. Kennedy, Gerald Donald Kennedy, the Postmaster General. That was in 1945. In 1946, on the 22nd of July, there was the huge explosion at the King David Hotel, when they brought in the milk,
Yeah.
a huge explosion. And Kennedy, by chance, was visiting there. You had the chief secretary, the highest official offices of the Palestine government, except the High Commissioner himself, were stationed at the King David, in one of the wings of the King David Hotel.
I know.
And Kennedy was visiting there. He was on duty, and he was killed he was the highest British official who was killed in the King David explosion. Now, I, being because of my gratitude to Kennedy, who had gave the instructions to have me employed and all that, and I knew him, I wrote a letter. Me, a 15-year-old boy, 16-year-old boy, I wrote a letter of condolence to his widow, to Kennedy's widow. I sent it. He was living in Jerusalem, I don't know where. I sent a letter, and I probably told her how I came to know him and all that, and the deepest condolences and all that. And she gave that letter to Mr. Blackwell, who was the Deputy Postmaster General, and who called me in and told me that, yes, Mr. Kennedy's widow has informed me that you sent a nice letter of condolence, and she wishes to thank you for that letter. Okay, so that was then the acting postmaster. He was deputy, but he was acting because he was killed. And then a year later, or anyway, not a year later, later, while I was working for another couple of years at the post office, then in April 48, when the postal authorities were organizing this mission to Palestine, to Cyprus, so when they came to compose the list of people who should, of the Jewish participants in this delegation to Cyprus, so Blackwell remembered me, unusual circumstances, and he said I should be among the people who should go to Cyprus. Now, many of those chosen declined because we had to go to Cyprus through Arab territory, Sheikh Jarrah, and all kinds of dangerous areas in Jerusalem where there were the hostilities.
Why? You can go to the ocean.
No. That was in, don't forget, as from the declaration of the United States resolution at the end of November 1947, UN resolution on the establishment of Palestine. Hostilities had started in Jerusalem, all over the country. You already had hostilities, people being killed, masses of people being killed. Before the Arab armies had started, there were already disturbances. So anyway, the way we got out of Jerusalem to Cyprus was as following. We went to
Kalandia, no?
We went through
Kalandia.
Arab territory. You had to go through Sheikh Jarrah, through Arab territories.
Kalandia.
איך נקרא הקיבוץ על יד ירושלים? קיבוץ, נו, שלא היה להם חלב, לא היה להם איפה למכור את החלב, ונתנו לו חלב.
זה אני לא...
There's a kibbutz, we had to go, we were taken to a small airstrip through Arab territory, to an airstrip near to...
קלנדיה.
No,
זה לא קלנדיה איפה.
Kalandia, yes, we were taken to Kalandia Airport, which is a small airstrip just near close to Jerusalem. We were flown by small planes, six British Army planes, six passengers every time. To Lida Airport, which was closed. Lida Airport was at the time already closed. Nobody was there. There we boarded a Dakota 2 airplane, which is a two-engined Dakota. It's not the big Dakotas which you had later. It's a small plane with about 26 seats or something. And we were sent to Cyprus. We were flown to Cyprus. And that's how we go. Now, because at the beginning of this journey from Jerusalem to Kalandia Airport, you went through Arab territory, and we were escorted there on this trip because of the dangers. We were escorted by British Army armored cars, with cannons. We were escorted because we were in danger of being attacked by Arab terrorists and all that. Because of this part of the trip, many of those who were some who were chosen to go on this delegation, they said, "No, we're afraid. We don't want to go." Now, I was chosen originally. I wasn't, taken instead of somebody else, but others did not go just because of the reason. We arrived in Nicosia at the airport. We were sent up to Platris. Platris is near. Cyprus it gets up to the height of 2,000 meters or more. Troodos. Cyprus is a nice island. It's a historic island. It's a nice island. The British government in summer, that was end of April, we went right up. We went right up to Platris at the height of I don't know how many meters it was, 1,000 or 1,500 meters. And that's where we stayed at hotels there and worked there, had offices there, and that's where we worked.
What did you do did you explore the island? Like, did you have any time to do fun stuff?
Yeah, we used to go on weekends. We used to hire the Jewish, among those 15 or 20, we used to hire a car with a driver, and who had a gramophone, one a gramophone without batteries, and we used to tour the island. We used to go to the coastal areas for 2 days, from Friday to Sunday, and we could hear records, and we visited nice places, and then we also, on the 15th of May, we visited the Jewish camps in Famagusta and all kinds. There were British camps of people who had not been allowed to enter Palestine, who were deported to Cyprus, who were let's call it interned in Cyprus. When we visited on the Day of Independence, we went to visit them. They were staying in Famagusta and other places, famous, well-known places.
תגיד, איך חזרת מקפריסין?
חזרתי באונייה, מלימסול, אני יודע איפה. כן. So on weekends we used to, sometimes, there was, there was a social life there, to a certain extent, yes. And we used to tour the areas. It was nice. It's a nice natural. It's up in the mountains. Very nice. Nice place. It was a tourist area. Yes. And I had left with the permission, with the Haganah. I had not, had not escaped, shirked army service or anything like that. I had a permission by the Haganah to leave because of my taking part in this mission. I left officially, and I didn't. I was not shirking anything, and so that was fully. That was very. It was permitted. That's how we got to Cyprus. Came back in November. Yeah, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. And then I started working again at the postal authorities. Then the government offices had moved from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv because Jerusalem had been besieged. Jerusalem was besieged. There was nothing to eat in Jerusalem.
Right.
There was no water in Jerusalem. There was nothing in Jerusalem. People were starving in Jerusalem. People were in a terrible state in Jerusalem. So I didn't return to Jerusalem at the time. I went to Tel Aviv, and the postal personnel section of the post office was in Tel Aviv, in Jaffa. In Jaffa.
אבל יפו עדיין הייתה ערבית.
So what? So Jaffa was Arab, because just as Jaffa is Arab today, you can say the same today.
Okay.
But you had Jews already living in Jaffa, all the more, because not everybody. I don't think everybody in Jaffa had stayed in Jaffa. Some have probably run away, left. And then in May 1959, I think, the postal authorities returned to the original premises at this big, huge building on Jaffa Road near the Generali building in Jerusalem. So I worked there. I worked there till 1952, when I was studying at the university, and I saw all kind of, and they were publishing new versions of Palestine laws, Nusach Hadash they called it, new versions of the Palestine laws with all kinds of changes. The Ministry of Justice, the department, the drafting department, the legislation department of the Ministry of Justice were publishing draft of the new laws, of the new versions of the Palestine laws. And I was reading those versions, and I saw mistakes, grammatical mistakes.
In
And
English?
I was very good at legal draft. I was very good at languages and legal drafting and all that.
English?
So what did I do?
In English?
In Hebrew. They were English laws which were now getting, up till now, during the war, during the mandate, you had English laws with Hebrew translations, while if there's anything unclear, the English version would prevail. Now they didn't want the English during the State of Israel. They didn't want the English version to be there, so I had to have a good. Up to then, the Hebrew version was unimportant because the English version was used. Now here in the State of Israel, you couldn't have an English version anymore. That's impossible. You had to have a binding Hebrew version, and then they were publishing drafts of the binding Hebrew version. There were drafts of the binding version, and inviting people to comment. And there I was writing. I wrote to the. I was pretty good at understatement at drafting and all that, and I wrote to the head of the legislation department, drafted at the Ministry of Justice in Jerusalem, and I told him, in this draft, this is not correct. This is his wording is incorrect. The punctuation. I've done that to you. I've done that to. Haven't I, Noam?
Yeah.
I've done that to you too. So I found mistakes, spelling mistake, anything. So what did they do? So the head of that department called the post office and said, I'd like you to renounce Willie Aaron Tomashov. Please let him be transferred to us, to the Ministry of Justice. So I was moved from the Ministry of Posts to the Ministry of Justice. I said, he asked for me, wanted me to be moved, and so that's how I got into the Ministry of Justice. And I worked there for 2 years, about 2 years, and then I got fed up with it, and I got moved to the District Attorney's Office. And after graduating in March 1955, I graduated after doing my articles. You know, you had to do your stage, your articles. I did my articles. In March 1955, I got my law license. I was licensed, and I became Assistant District Attorney in Jerusalem, a prosecutor. And I started working at the DA's office in Jerusalem, and I started appearing in court, in the District Court of Jerusalem, or in the Magistrates' Court, but mainly in district courts. I was signing letters of indictment, and I was there. I was trying. I was representing the prosecution at trials before leading judges of the District Court of Jerusalem. So I became an attorney. That was 1955. At the age of 25, I was 25. I was an attorney, a junior attorney.
They have the bar exam. The bar.
You know, I'm talking about it. I did my bar exam. I finished my bar exams, and I got my license after the bar exams. I got my license on the 21st of March 1955, at the age of 25. And that's when I was immediately appointed Assistant District Attorney, one of the Assistant District Attorneys of Jerusalem. Next building, you have the Generali building. You have the. It was all close to each other. Yes.
And then right beyond that was the border.
Yeah, not right beyond that. You had the border. You got towards the Jaffa Gate. Yeah. By the way, in Jerusalem, it was different. When you from the Mamilla Road, Princess Mary Avenue, which is called actually Kayom Princess Mary there, and this Princess Mary Avenue, actually Kayom. Shachachnu. You used to have stores with Arab sweet stuff, huge plates of sweet.
The can.
I've got it. All the way from Mamilla, from the King David, to the Jaffa Gate, you had shops and things. Now, it's all been erased now. It's gone. Everything's changed there. It's been raised. It's been... Yes.
But you have the mall. Now you have the shopping center.
Yeah. That's right. Yes, that's right. On one side you got the mall. That's right. Yes, really. You've got a very nice mall there with a. That's right.
Could you go near the border? Were you able to go near the old city?
What period are you talking about?
Before.
Before what?
Before they took it back.
During the mandate,
No. From 48, after 48.
Yeah.
You couldn't go into the old city.
Oh, no. The old city was not in our hands. No. We went to visit the Wailing Wall, Kotel Maravi, after arriving in Jerusalem at the end of 1945. There you had a wall, it was a narrow place then at the time. Before they destroyed it, there was a wall which was demolished. And then it's now a big open space. But then the Wailing Wall, the Kotel Maravi, the Western Wall or the Wailing Wall, it was only had the width of, I don't know, about it was 10 or 15 yards wide, and it was different. Now it's all open. Yeah. Then I used to go to the old city, yes, but afterwards, no, of course not.
Was there barbed wire?
I don't know how they did it. By the way, it's interesting. You know, we had the right to have police on Mount Scopus during between 1948 and 1967. You had you had Israeli police up there because of the university. Mount Scopus
was in our hands.
It was in our hands, so we were allowed, according to the peace accords, not the peace, the accords, the armistice accords, we were allowed to send policemen up there, but the policemen were actually soldiers disguised, and I don't know. Now it's only been recently disclosed who really were the person, and they were changed every month or every few weeks. They went up there for 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and then they came back, and others were sent and all that. But they were not as innocent as they were supposed to. You know, everybody thought they were doing all kinds of jobs up there, and that's been revealed only very recently. What we were doing up there, what we succeeded in doing up there on Mount Scopus, which, as Safta said, was in our hands. Yes, yes. But the disturbances in Jerusalem started immediately after the declaration of UN resolution.
Did people think that there wasn't? Did everyone know there was going to be a war?
Well, it was clear from the beginning, because if you got these riots immediately after this UN resolution, it was clear that things were not going to be. Only later, in April, May, it became clear that the Arab armies are going to attack us. The armies, the regular armies. You had the Arab Legion in Transjordan, in British Transjordan, the Arab Legion, headed by Glab Pasha, by the British. The officers were there British, and they were in Jerusalem, near Jerusalem, with their guns and shells and tanks and things. It's unbelievable. Those who killed Felix, they were near Jerusalem. It was clear. It was clear. It all started, you know where? Very close to the King David Hotel. You had a commercial center of Jerusalem, Merkaz Meskhari, where you had small. It was narrow roads where you had Arab and Jewish shops, all kinds of shops, and there the first disturbances, and then they had fires. They already in December 1947, there were very serious riots there, and it was clear that the Arabs were not acquiescing in what's happening. It was quite clear. Yeah. And they burnt. There was a cinema called Noah Mazaya Princess Mary Rex. The Rex cinema, a small cinema, you know, like you get today at the Cinema City here. You know, maybe 100 seats.
Very small.
Very small. And that was also sometime between November 1949 and May 1948, when you had between November 47, and May 48, when the State of Israel was established. Sometime during those 6 months, it was also burnt. It was burnt, destroyed, absolutely destroyed. It was clear. It was clear. and you had these. It was quite clear there's going to be a war, and that's when they tried to get ammunition and to bring. They knew that Arabs were armed, that the Arab Legion had tanks, and they had armored cars, and they had guns, big guns. And we were trying, Ben Gurion was trying in Europe to purchase and bring over also heavy machine guns and guns, big guns, and airplanes, our military planes and everything, so that we would have at least a few of these when the Arab armies, the regular armies, try to invade us and destroy us. Yeah, that we survived the 48 war, it's unbelievable. Egyptians, they came in, they arrived in, I don't know, they got up to Ashdod or something. I don't know where they got. They weren't far from. I don't know how far north they got, but they were pretty far north. And the Iraqis too, and they were all over.
How long was it?
Hmm?
How long was it?
How long was what?
The whole conflict.
The conflict, well, you had in July, you had two, what do you call them? Hafuga, two breaks, short breaks.
10 days, something like that.
Between fighting, some agreement on some standstill, or what they call it. And Felix was killed during the second Hafuga, which means the second, not standstill, I don't know.
Ceasefire.
Ceasefire. The second ceasefire, yeah, on the 18th of July, yeah. And now it's like this. Fighting continued for several months after that, because we decided that we want to capture all kinds of places. I think also in October, November, in the Negev and all kinds in south. Eilat. There was still those fighting continuing most of 1948, but not as intense as it has been in May, June, and July. I mean, it was terrible in May, June, July. It was horrible. Every Independence Day, they broadcast the names of on television here, the names of all the 20,000 or 23,000 casualties, war casualties. Now, they start with war casualties in 1875 or in 1910, a few a year, a few a year, with all kinds of incidents and all that, clashes with the Arabs. Then they start. Then you reach the beginning of 1948, after the UN resolution. You get more hostilities, and then you get the War of Independence in May. Now, just an example, on the 18th of July, on which the date on which Felix was killed, fell in action, you have on broadcast a list, I've counted them, you may have 180 deaths on that day, casualties. In the War of Independence, something between 5,000 or 6,000 of the Jewish population fell in action, which means about 1% of the 500,000 or 600,000 Jews who lived in the country then. That's corresponding, in America, that would mean 3 million dead. America now a population of about 320 million. I don't know actually how many. So, first of all, I was in Tel Aviv till May 49, so that I met relatives there. Now, after that, we used to pop to Tel Aviv for weekends from now and then. And of course, again, then I used to meet relatives. Now, it's like this. On Filon Street, near Ben Gurion Boulevard, I lived on Rehov Reines then. I slept there, and I had meals on Rehov Filon, which is also near the Keren Kayemet Boulevard. And there, my uncle Richard Tzvi, one of my father's brothers, a younger brother, who had immigrated to Palestine already in the early 30s. He was a bachelor. He was living near where he was living on a Rehov Filon with Etta and Esther, Grete and Imre Kaiser, with the Kaiser family. They had 2 rooms, and despite the fact that they had only 2 rooms, they had the daughter Esther, who was born in 1936, and he was still a young person. They had Richard, our uncle, my father, he was living there, and I was having my meals there. I used to have my midday meal at these very hospitable people, Grete and Imre Kaiser. Now, we were related as follows. Grete's mother, Fisher, maiden name Fisher, and my grandmother were sisters. Fisher, the Fisher family.
Fisher or fish?
Fisher. And to cut a long story short, our family used to meet, so that Shandi, now that I know that Shandi is connected with Moritz, and I don't know where I saw him or how many times I saw him. Anyway, I saw him. I used to see him from time to time. That's the story about.
I think we saw I think Tommy had a picture of him.
Yeah, I should imagine. Why not? He was in America. They took pictures in America. There's no problem there. Yeah, but he wasn't. I mean, I didn't figure very prominently as far as I'm concerned. But I remember him. That's all. Etta, who is now 80. She was born in 36, so she's 80 and a half. She has a phenomenal memory, and she remembers Felix very well, because Felix also used to go to Tel Aviv during those 2.5 years. Felix lived in Palestine from November 45 till July 48. He used to go to Tel Aviv, and he used to visit Uncle Richard, who was living with Grete and family. And Felix, I think she wrote, Etta wrote, didn't she, Leah, that Felix took her to the pictures, to the cinema, and she remembers Erwin too. And it's very nice that there are a few people who still remember. It's very gratifying that a few people still remember Felix. So few. Unfortunately, I feel very bad that we haven't, Felix isn't commemorated. That so few people still remember Felix. He had his 90th birthday now. Few people now remember him. Yeah. And the same with Irwin. I haven't succeeded. I didn't do a very good job in Chicago, so that's, to ensure that many people remember Irwin, and I didn't do a good job there, unfortunately. He was far away, and I didn't. Other people would have maybe had all kinds of evenings there, or memorial, not services, but all kinds of events there. But I didn't. No, I'm very sorry about that. So that Irwin also is not remembered by many people. Yes, it's sad, but that's the way it is when somebody would now be 90 or 85 or whatever, 86, and that's the way it is. The more time elapses, the less people remember. That's the way it is. It's very sad.
Do you have any of the Chicago Law Reviews?
Very good question. I don't think I have any. I'm sure you can see them in the internet, maybe. He was the chief editor of the Chicago Law Review. That must have been in somewhere between 1959 and 1961. He moved to Chicago, Irwin, after graduating at George Washington University in 1956. And then he did his Master of Business Administration. Just a minute. No, he did his Master of Business Administration in Washington, didn't he? And then he studied law from 1956. After receiving a master degree in Washington, he studied law in Chicago as for 56. So that in the Chicago laws in Chicago Law Reviews quarterly Chicago quarterly law reviews of 1959 or 60 or 61, they must have there Irwin will feature as the editor-in-chief. I don't know which month. I think he was an editor-in-chief for about a year and a half. I could probably, I think when you switch inverted commas, Irwin A. Tomashoff, Irwin A. for Abraham, Tomashoff, in the internet, you will probably see, I could do it even now, you will probably see, just a minute, let's try it. There you go. I do it advanced search. Look at this. No, look at this. Look at this. Look at this. I do it this way. Look. I put inverted commas. Inverted commas. It's always better to have this. You know what they do? They limit. Now, Chicago Law Review, they call it. Chicago, I think it's only called Chicago. Harvard Law Review, Chicago Law Review. Now, there we are. Do you also do your searches as well as I do? Have you learned something now? I think you have, haven't you? First of all, Noam, 2 or 3 things to learn. Inverted commas, always good. In every of the 3 lines, you know, I got 3 lines. Each of the 3 lines you saw, I put inverted commas. So when you do that, you limit you pinpoint your searches. Now let's see. Editor-in-Chief 1961, I wasn't mistaken. Front matter, available at Irvin-in-Chief, just a second. Let's see what is anything better. Irvin-in-Chief, an attorney will be held. Services for Irwin will be held at 19 from editor-in-chief of the Law Review. He was chairman of the Chicago Bar. Here you can see who Irwin was. He was quite he was active in the Chicago Bar. Not only as a student was he there, as a student he was editor-in-chief. He was a student then, but he was also active in the Chicago Bar. He was chairman of the Chicago Bar Association Committee on the Uniform Law Code or something. I've got it all. If I were to open it, you could read it all. But now, I think that's a good way to look up Irwin, as where I did it. Irwin A. Tomashoff, editor-in-chief, Chicago Law Review, and then you get a lot about Irwin. Very good. I'm glad. I've never done this before. It's good. Very
What was
good.
the first one?
Good. Thanks. Good that you asked me. Yeah. We could do it now. We could do it otherwise. Whatever you like. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's nothing like this about Felix. Not in 1948. There was none of this. You know, nothing was recorded. Oh, sorry. There was nothing like this in 1948. Felix. I can see what they write about Felix. Erwin A. Tomashoff, editor-in-chief. Editorial board 6061. Erwin A. Tomashoff, editor-in-chief. Prestigious. You know what that means? And Chicago was a... כן, ודאי. כמו כלום מצאתי את זה. I'm very good at searching. That's what your father said. Your dad says. I'm very good at searching. I'm really. That's what a lawyer has to be. A lawyer doesn't have to know the law. He knows what he has to know is Erwin A. Tomashoff, editor-in-chief.
Okay.
A lawyer doesn't have to know the laws. He has to know where to find the precedents and the laws and the paragraphs and all that. That's what he has to know. He doesn't have to know by heart all the paragraphs. He knows how to search. That's the main thing. And a lawyer, when he drafts, what's the importance of a lawyer? When he drafts a contract, he has to know. No, you can take a chair. You can bring a chair if you want to.
That's it. There's no more.
No, you can't press anything here. A lawyer has to know when he prepares a contract, he has to take into account all the eventualities, all what may happen, and what he wants to say about all the eventualities. What should happen if this happens? Who wins? Who loses? Who pays? Who is exempt? Who does not have to pay? That's what a lawyer has to think about. That's the difference between an ordinary person agreeing on anything, on a sale of a flat or any contract, and a lawyer has to know what to do. As to what happens, what should happen. Yes. So we did a very small. We did something. Yes. As I said, I found a few documents of Felix, a few letters of Felix is very moving, very short. Felix was he was terse. He wasn't, he was not a verbative,
Not
verbose. He was not very.
lugubrious.
He was.
Lugubrious.
That's right. He was very very short, and he was a very serious person, Felix. A very nice person, very honest person. And he loved jazz, and he was he was an expert in jazz. We were nothing compared with him. He knew he was.
But nobody played any instruments?
No. So far as I know, he did not play. No, and he was so active, in England during the war. He was fire watching. You know what fire watching was? Fire watching was you were afraid of incendiary bombs. You were afraid that the Germans may be dropping bombs over Bedford, which was unimportant. It was not a strategic town, You had no munitions factories in Bedford. And that it may set fire on a certain house or a certain area, a fire which will extend, and they have to, so that the earlier you see it and get the firefighting brigades to go there and try to distinguish it, the better. So you had in addition to the blackouts which you had during the war, you had to have blackouts, everything black, and the cars also had to have black lights, blackened lights, and all that. So Felix was taking part in that. He was doing fire watching. I don't know, once or twice a week, just as a sideline. Playing table tennis, he was champion of the town, of Bedford town, in table tennis, Felix. Once he did a tour near Bedford. Had nice surroundings, areas, and it was not the most beautiful part of England. You had more famous areas, the Cotswolds and but all kinds of more. But anyway, we used to on Saturdays, Sundays, we used to take walks, 10 miles or 7 miles from Bedford to surrounding villages, picturesque villages. So Felix once, don't know with whom, he did such a tour, a weekend tour, and then in the Torch, which was the weekly publication of the Bedford Jewish Youth Center, he depicted on one page, 20 lines, maybe 25 lines, this tour of his until they reached a chapel, a beautiful chapel near a stream, and he explained how the stream flowed near the chapel. When we were in England in 1989, 50 years after the beginning of the Second World War, when they had the first get-together of the Kindertransport, boys and girls, near London, in Harrow, which is a part north of London, we were taken on one of the 3 days. We were taken to Bedford from morning till late at night, and we took this description of Felix's, of how he went to this village, and it was so exact. לאה, את זוכרת?
מה?
שאנחנו נסענו עם מנפרד זילברמן,
כן.
ויכולנו להגיע, and we reached the chapel, and we reached the
היינו בפנים.
we reached it was that he gave such a clear description of, and it was such a moving day not to reconcile, to redo the tour which Felix did in his lifetime. It was really memorable. Yeah.
Well, what happened to that letter?
Hmm?
What happened to the description?
I've got it somewhere. I've got no. I'm drowned. I'm inundated in paper. The whole flat is full of tens of thousands. I should be destroying, if I had time. I should be destroying everything superfluous.
Or you could just put it all onto one computer key.
But you have to, first of all, you have to
Like
print it. You can't.
Scan it.
Hmm?
Like
Yeah, scan it. I don't even know what the word, don't know what it means to scan. Nobody's taught me how to scan and what to scan, and I don't know. As I've said, when I went over the papers which my letters which Saba Aaron gave us after we came to Palestine, I took out. I did this for Dad because we were searching for any records about Leopold, you know, Bertha's husband, one of the four.
Yeah.
And your dad asked me to try to find anything about him. So scanned everything, scanned with my eyes, everything, and found nothing except that he was called Poldy. That I, from England, asked, "How is Poldy?" I used to ask questions, you know, at the age of 9, I used to ask, "How is this? How is grandfather?" I was very inquisitive. I used to ask questions about everybody. How is Ilse? Ilse, who left us who was from Vienna, who stayed with us in Brno, in Brno, and then left for Palestine in 39 in time, and who reached Palestine, not like Eva, who was, you know, exterminated on the way. She reached Palestine. How is Ilse, and how is this, that, the other? I used to ask questions, yeah. But how's Felix's, because I found a few letters of interest, which I have placed aside. Yes, but it was very short. He was really, and then I found a letter which he had not sent, or which had been sent and returned to us after Felix fell in action. Maybe the recipient of the letter in England had sent it, and it's a very sad letter, and it shows how unhappy Felix was in Jerusalem. This dump called Jerusalem. Listen.
Wow.
In May 48, during the siege, before, or when things were already pretty bad, yeah. He wrote about. He was corresponding with his friends from Bedford. Felix was then 21, and he had friends there with whom we were later in contact until Jeffrey Fisher died 5 years ago, and Jeffrey Fisher, and whom else was it? Anyway. And he was corresponding with them, just as I was corresponding with my friend Fred Winterberger, who's in London now, and who comes to Israel every year, once or twice, and stays at the Arcadia Hotel in Herzliya. Have you heard of Fred?
Yeah, Nomi was telling me about him yesterday because we were at that hotel.
At the Arcadia. What were you doing there?
We were getting a drink.
Getting a drink inside the Arcadia or outside?
At the bar next to it.
Oh, oh, I know where you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a restaurant there. Did
That's
you have
where
to
we're
go
going.
downstairs or something?
Well, that's where we're going on Friday.
Hmm? Go what?
On Friday. We're going. There's a bar next to the hotel on the beach.
Ah, did you go to Yam Sheva?
No, it was next to that.
Next to Yam Sheva, there's a bar. Aha.
כנראה על יד ים שבע זו המסעדה שנסגרה, עכשיו זה בא אולי.
Ah, Noam, listen, let's deviate for a moment. Tell me, Elvis and Liberace, what was it like?
It was amazing. It
Really
was.
good.
It was silly.
What?
It was a little silly.
Were the performers good?
Yeah.